So Kunja Bihari Vidyabhushan, who later became known as Srila Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj, he arranged for a little house to be the first temple of Lord Chaitanya outside of Mayapur, of Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati. It was in Calcutta. The address was 1 Ultadanga Junction Road. And on the ground floor in a little courtyard was deities. And on the first story, the brahmacharis lived. And on the second story, there were a few grihastha couples that lived. And on the roof, the terrace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had a little room. And he began to initiate more and more people. And each night he would give lectures on the roof. And one time he took about 23 of his disciples on tour to various places where they were preaching vigorously. And meanwhile, he was starting presses to print books. He was fervent in printing books. He was printing Bhakti Vinod Thakur's books, Narottam Das Thakur's books, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's books, Madhvacharya's books, Ramanujacharya's books. He was writing his own books. The Sajjanatoshini. He began a daily newspaper, a weekly newspaper, a bi-weekly newspaper, all different newspapers, magazines. All at once, he had presses set up in various places. He was so dynamic to distribute the name of the Lord. At one point, it was the Indian broadcasting system, but he had his own show just to teach the public about Gaudiya Vaishnavism. He began Dairam exhibitions. Beautiful, beautiful, through the technology of the time, little clay dolls. And some of them you would pull string and they would move like this. And they would just depict the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the message of Bhagavad Gita. He called the printing press the big mridanga, because the mridanga in Harinam can be heard for 2 or 3 blocks. But through publishing literatures, the message could be heard throughout the whole world. It was in 1922, Abhay Charan, who later became known as A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One of his friends named Narendra, he invited him, please come to see one very good sannyasi that I have met. Srila Prabhupada explained that ever since he was a little child, he was always the leader of all of his group of friends. And if any of the friends were going to accept something as good, it had to be endorsed and authorized by Abhay. So please come and meet this good sadhu. And our Srila Prabhupada, he said, I have seen so many sadhus. Because when he was a little boy, his father, Gaur Mohan Dey, would feed no less than 5 sadhus every day. And many of them were smoking the chillums. And sometime Prabhupada said when he was young, he would see people just living the most degraded lives from his window where he lived. He would sometimes see, and in the morning they would leave their wife and their children or some prostitute or whatever, and then they would just put on the robes of a sannyasi and they would go out begging, and then they would come back and with their money. That was their occupation, to be a sadhu. So Prabhupada said, I do not care to see sadhus. I have seen so many sadhus, but this one is different. So Narendra literally pulled him. Srila Prabhupada was born in a Vaishnava family. When they went to the roof of Ultadanga Junction Road and they saw Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati sitting with his back erect, speaking from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Abhay offered his obeisances. And just as he was getting up, he heard the thunderous but sweet and merciful voice of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who told him, you are intelligent young men. You should take these teachings of Lord Chaitanya and spread them throughout the world in the English language. And Srila Prabhupada was very astonished. I have not even introduced myself and he's giving me a lifelong mission. And he began to argue. He said, Swamiji, he was a Gandhian at the time. We are a dependent nation. Who will listen to us? The need of the time is independence from the British. After we become independent from the British and get out from under their thumb, then we will have credibility and dignity. Then the luxuries of preaching Harikatha could be. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura explained that all these politics are temporary. The only real problem in this world is a lack of Krishna consciousness. and the only solution is Krishna consciousness. It is the eternal dharma, and is the eternal necessity. And it cannot wait for any change in politics, any change in any situation. It must be now. There is only one truth, and that truth is the only solution to the problems and the sufferings of that world. And that truth is devotion to Krishna. When Srila Prabhupada heard these words, he was convinced. And Srila Prabhupada told us that at that very moment within my heart, not officially, but within my heart, I accepted him as my spiritual master. Later on, Srila Prabhupada moved to Allahabad, and some of the disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati were starting a temple there, and Prabhupada began associating with them. And I believe it was in 1932, was it? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura invited thousands and thousands of people to Vrindavan for the Braj Mandala Parikrama. And there, it was such a well-organized yatra. They had so many tents for everyone to live in, and they had kitchens, and they would move it every day. They would stop at one place, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, there was a big tent where he would give his lectures to thousands of people each evening. Then there was a kitchen that would cook prasad for them. Then everyone had their tents. The sannyasis were in one area, the brahmacharis in another area, the grihastas in another areas, the pilgrims in other areas. And there were guards, and there were torches for light at night. It was an entire city set up. Then the next morning, after Mangal Arati, they would start walking to the next place, all 168 kilometers of the Braj Mandala Kroshas, and they would take it down and set it up in the next place, and the next place, and the next place. And when they were in Vrindavan, the caste Goswamis of Vrindavan, who were running the temples of the original Goswamis, they were very much against Bhaktisiddhanta's teachings. Because he was teaching that anyone can be a guru, and anyone can be a Vaishnava, and anyone can be a Brahmin if they just surrender to Krishna and chant the holy names and have the qualifications. And because these men did not have the qualifications, they were being exposed. When Bhaktisiddhanta and his people came to Vrindavan, people were throwing stones at them and threatening them. In fact, some of the leaders of the Goswamis decided to have a discussion with Bhaktisiddhanta about this. And after hearing his scriptural understanding, they were all silent. They said, yes, we have to agree with everything you say. But still they kept all the doors to their temples closed, so Bhaktisiddhanta and his people could not come in. He faced so much opposition because he was preaching the truth. Srila Prabhupada told us that once Bhaktisiddhanta personally told him that they have tried to kill me. One time, a policeman came to Bhaktisiddhanta and said, please be careful. Some of these people have bribed me 25,000 rupees. That was a lot in those days, in the 1930s. 25,000 rupees. We will kill him, you just don't do anything. He said, generally, we're policemen. We're from India. We take these bribes. It's part of our life. But you are a great sadhu. I cannot do this to a sadhu. So please be careful. Srila Prabhupada met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati at Koshi, the place of Nanda Maharaj's treasury. And one of the sannyasis of Gaudiya Math announced that today we are going to Sheshashayi Vishnu temple. Anyone who wants to come, please come. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura will also be giving lecture. So everyone went to Sheshashayi Vishnu, except a few of the main sannyasis of the Math and Srila Prabhupada. He was thinking, what will I see the Lord? I will see him more in the words of my Guru Maharaj. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was preaching for hours and hours and hours. And Prabhupada was just sitting there listening. Prabhupada told us that my Guru Maharaj spoke in such high language that sometimes I understood what he was saying and sometimes I didn't. But I was just so satisfied, just taking in the pure vibration of his katha. And people were coming and going and coming and going. But Srila Prabhupada sat and listened at the feet of his Guru. And the next morning, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left the parikrama, and Srila Prabhupada was there to offer his obeisances. And Prabhupada went back to Allahabad. About a month later, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati was coming to Allahabad to perform the cornerstone ceremony for the erecting of a new temple. And the president at the time was one brahmachari named Atulananda. And he was recommending people for initiation. And when he recommended Abhay Charan, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati looked at our Prabhupada and he said, "Yes, I will initiate him. He listens very nicely. He does not go away." And then Srila Prabhupada took first and second initiation together on the same day, and he was given the name Abhay Charanaravinda Das. Srila Prabhupada was always so eager to serve his Guru Maharaj. At one time he shifted his business to Bombay. Srila Prabhupada was renting a little flat at Grant Road. And one day he was walking in the street and he happened to meet two of his sannyasi godbrothers, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. And they told him, "We have been sent by our Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, to start a temple." So Srila Prabhupada made his first priority in life to help them find a temple. And the three of them would go out preaching each night. Prabhupada would get the contacts, Prabhupada would set up the programs, he would bring them, he would introduce them, he would lead kirtan, Srila Sridhar Maharaj would preach, Goswami Maharaj would raise funds, and soon they had a beautiful temple. And then they invited Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to come to Bombay to install the deities. And at the initiation ceremony, Srila Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj told Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, he said, "This Abhay Charanaravinda, what a great preacher he is. He should not be away from us doing this business. He should be the president of the temple." And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, "No, let him be away from you now. In due course of time, he will do everything." Srila Prabhupada ki. That great prophecy was made just a few minutes from here in Bombay. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati decided that the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu should go beyond the borders of India. He had established 64 mutts in India, 64 temples. And he also established 108 padapits. Padapits means, and even today, when you go to Mangalagiri, or you go to Singhachalam, or you go to Tirupati, or you go to Srirangam, or you go to Kabur, where Ramananda Rai and Lord Chaitanya met. At all these places you will find a little Gaudiya Math shrine with Lord Chaitanya's footprints installed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He also started a beautiful temple in Kurukshetra, and a wonderful temple he started in Madras. And it was in Madras that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur decided that now is the time to send our men abroad. The message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not confined to any sectarian idea. It is the universal principle of religion. Love of God, which is common amongst all religions, and how to achieve that love by the congregational chanting of the Holy Name. There's a very famous lecture he gave as he was sending 3 of his disciples to England and Germany to preach the message of Sri Chaitanya. In 1896, his father and Shiksha Guru, Thakur Bhakti Vinod, sent a book entitled The Life and Teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the West. He sent it to many universities throughout the West. And the first one to reach the shores of America was at Macmillan University, because he had such a dream that Lord Chaitanya's teachings be affordable to everyone, everywhere. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati decided to send Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha Maharaj, who happened to be a disciple of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, who took sannyas from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And one of his very senior sannyasi disciples, whose name was Bhakti Hriday Bhaun Maharaj, and a very great scholar and writer named Sambhidananda Prabhu. These 3 men he dispatched to England, and he gave instructions to them before they left. And those instructions are eternally documented as they were written down. You see, in those days they didn't have tape recorders, but the disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, especially two of them who were very learned, Ananta Vasudev and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they would just sit and write down exactly. Actually, did you know that when Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati was only about 15 years old or something like that, he invented a whole system of shorthand writing. He was brilliant in every field. So his disciples would write down every word he would speak. Better than tape recorders, because they have bhakti. Tape recorders, sometimes the electricity goes off or the battery goes out. Sometimes the tape goes, it gets wound up. But these men, they would just, every word he would speak was just noted and published. Many of it was published. So this was a very, very special event at the Madras Gaudiya Math. And in essence, he explained to them that if you want to teach the supremely great teachings of Lord Chaitanya to people of the Western society, there are 4 principles you have to live by. And if you live by these principles and teach by these principles, you are guaranteed to be empowered and successful. Trinadapi sunichena, tororapi sehishnana, amanina, manadena, kirtaniya sada. If you want to spread the glories of the holy name, you have to be more humble than a blade of grass. You have to be more tolerant than a tree. You have to be ready to offer all respects to others, and you expect none in return. If you live by these 4 principles, Krishna will empower you to spread the glories of the holy name throughout the whole world. And then he taught them how to preach. He quoted Srila Prabhupada Saraswati Thakura, how he would preach. There was a prayer. He says, I take straw between my teeth and I get down on my hands and knees and I beg you, my dear brother, please give up the illusions of Maya and take the holy name of Krishna. He said, when you go to the West, you will find that materially they are far superior than you. As far as their material education, their technology, their wealth, their standard of living, their mannerisms, everything. They may all be superior to, but never be attracted to these things, because they are not worth anything. You simply keep your attraction fixed only on hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. And whether they are devotees of the Lord or materialistic people, you must consider yourself the lowest of the low. You must consider everyone is better than you. You must consider yourself to be the servant of all. And in this mood of humble service, you have to crash through all illusions of these people. And you have to give them Hari Katha and Hari Kirtan. So these sannyasis went to England and they started a small center in London. And later on, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati sent Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj to England to help them, because he was not satisfied. He wanted Krishna consciousness to be spread in a big way. He wanted people to fulfill the dream of Lord Chaitanya. Priti Vityacha Ati Nagaradi-gran Sarvatra Moranam. In every town and village, they should be chanting his holy name. These men were doing good work. They met the king, King George, and the queen. Special audience with them, and he met Bhakti Saranga Maharaj met Lord Jetland. Lord Jetland was a very good well-wisher. He asked, "Can you make me Brahmin?" And Goswami Maharaj said, "Yes." "Well, what do I have to do?" "No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating." Lord Jetland said, "Impossible. How will we live without these things?" So the sannyasis who were sent there were thinking, we can make them favorable, we can make them appreciative, but to make them Vaishnavas, impossible. It's already, Lord Jetland has already endorsed it's impossible. But Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati had great hopes. And it was Srila Prabhupada who ultimately fulfilled those hopes.
You were listening to Radhanath Swami on thesacredconnect.com.